So, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Madhya Lila, the later pastimes of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and I think it was 91. Let me check.
I think we're on 93, prabhuji.
93. Okay. So we begin our reading from Madhya Lila 93. Text: Nityananda Prabhu Mahaprabhu Bhulaiya Ganga Tire Laya Ila Jamuna Boliya. Translation. Now this is happening when Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas and is on, he's just thinking what he's supposed to do. And therefore in that ecstasy, he just runs off towards Vrindavan. But then that's not the purpose. The purpose of his advent was to propagate the name and deliver human society. Many purposes. In fact, I was just reading in the morning here from Krishna book that you cannot understand what God does, why does he do it, for what purpose, unless you associate with his pure devotees. Then comes the question of what do you mean by association? So association means you hear from them. Then the question becomes, what do you mean hearing from them? So hearing is submissive oral reception. God, I never thought just a simple thing like opening your ears. Now we open our mouth, we move our hands, we move our legs. There is some activity done. What do you do with your ears? They're already open. So this is not the physical opening. This is the internal opening. And for that internal opening to happen, there are these three things which Prabhupada has given. Submissive, oral, reception. So submission is something which you can fake it. Is it not? Yeah, you can do that. Or like it is not a question of either you have it or you don't. At least you can try. So sincerity is the first step of submission. And the opposite of submission is to challenge. So I don't know what happens much in the churches in America, but at least in India, overwhelmingly, in a religious gathering, asking questions is discouraged. It is not encouraged. You just listen, that's all. When asking questions is actually a part of what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Pranipat Pariprashna Seva. Again, Pranipat is the submission part. But then in ISKCON, we sometimes take it to the other extreme, where a question is asked in order to test the knowledge of the speaker. And that is discouraged. A question is asked to challenge the speaker, that is discouraged. A question is asked, the third thing is the most subtle part. Does your life depend upon the answer? Or you are just thinking that, why did Krishna do that to Rukmini? Why did Radharani do like that? You may say, hey, what gives? Is your spiritual life dependent on that? Still, that is the first half. The next half is, if you get a proper answer, are you willing to follow it up? So, now this is just 1/3, submissive. Then the second is the oral part, where you have to hear. And third is reception. Now, when you say reception, you go to some hotel, you go to some event, and it says reception. Now, you accept some cordial, polite people there, right? You don't expect people to jump upon you and say, "Why are you here? Why are you asking me questions?" No, you say, "Hey, you are a receptionist." So, most, if not all, of philosophical problems in Krishna consciousness can be traced to these three things alone. People have issues with how do you understand the soul, how do you understand Paramatma, how do you see Brahma, how do you see whether people fall after reaching the Brahman platform, then what happens to them, what about the heavenly planets, so many questions. Many of these questions are just fancy questions. I call them like fancy jewelry. You may say, okay, I put it on, but even if I lose them, I don't mind. I'm not making fun of anybody, but Prabhu, I had a very important question to ask you last week. I kind of forgot what it was. I heard somebody say, and I'm using it sometimes. I said, no, it was not important. How do you say that? If it was, you would have never forgotten it. If you have a back pain or a neck pain, and it is so painful, do you ever forget to go to a doctor or take some medical advice for that? Because the moment you move your neck or back, it makes itself visible. I am here. Or Radha Gopinath Prabhu, the sweetest sadhu I've ever seen in my life, but he used to ask so many questions. And once in, this is Belgaum, where he met Maharaj for the first time. And Maharaj immediately liked this young man. And later, of course, Maharaj likes to make fun. So at one informal setting, Maharaj said, do you remember Radha Gopinath Prabhu? You came to me and said you have some questions, and then it went on for more than 2.5 hours, something like that. And he kind of smiled sheepishly, yes, yes. So Maharaj said, this young man is so enterprising, so brilliant. And he said, God, why doesn't he stop asking questions? He kept on asking, kept on asking. Today in his life, however, I see is one of the best counselors we ever have for from teenagers till 70 plus people. And I have practical experience. I have occupied a room just next to his when we are doing our translation at the Bhaktivedanta hospital. And for 2 hours, 3 hours, I see the other guy speaking. And then that person leaves, and I said, what was that? He said, well, he had some issues, so he had come for counseling. I said, counseling? I only heard his voice. I never heard you giving him any advice. He said, well, I've understood that when he comes, he wants to talk, and I listen. And then later I met that devotee who came to him. I said, you had some kind of a session, some discussion. He said, oh, with Gopinath Prabhu, he gives me very good solutions. So I was thinking in my mind, solutions? You didn't allow him to speak. Again, I went back to Gopinath Prabhu. I said, he's saying that you gave him good solutions. He said, look, many times people have solutions in their own heart. They just want a sympathetic ear. They want somebody whom they trust and whom they love. And he said, I am believing that, Paramatma in the heart, he does the job. See how simple it is in one sense, but it is very difficult. Many times when somebody comes to you, the devotee says, I already figured out what you have because, I cultivated you. I knew since you are a pup. I knew since you had just finished college and you had this thing. So I know your whole spiritual life. Just chant more rounds. That's it. Hare Krishna. And the person goes with a sullen face. He didn't even listen to me, I didn't have that problem. So that is something. Okay, we have a small question on the chat here from our sisters in Chicago. When you talk about people in Christian religion forbidden to ask questions, our most important scriptures, Bhagavatam and BG, are manifested of inquiries, Arjuna and Parikshit. Correct. I didn't say forbidden to ask questions. What I'm saying is many things, just like you don't clean up a room, especially in a tropical country like India, and you see cobwebs, isn't it? Or you see dirt anywhere. So things begin with a clean setup, but later, because of the influence of time, other things come there. But you are right. So, text 94. Translation. First of all, Lord Nityananda bewildered Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by bringing him along the banks of the Ganga, saying that it was the river Yamuna. Text 94. Shantipure Acharyer Grihe Agamana Prathama Bhiksha Kaila Taharatre Sankirtana. After 3 days, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to the house of Advaita Acharya at Shantipur and accepted alms there. Here, alms means basically he accepted lunch there. This was his first acceptance of alms. It is said alms because for a sannyasi, he is supposed to beg, and therefore the word alms is used. At night, see the word here is bhiksha in the word for word, accepting alms. Yeah. At night, he performed congregational chanting there. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It appears that in his transcendental ecstasy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forgot to eat for 3 continuous days. He was then misled by Nityanand Prabhu, who said that the river Ganga was the Yamuna. Because the Lord was in the ecstasy of going to Vrindavan, he was engladdened to see the Jamuna, although actually the river was the Ganga. In this way, the Lord was brought to the house of Advaita Prabhu at Shantipur after 3 days, and he accepted food there. As long as the Lord remained there, he saw his mother Shachi Devi and every night executed congregational chanting with all the devotees. Text 95. Mata Bhakta Ganer Taha Karila Milan Sarva Samadhana Kori Karila Niladrika Man. At the house of Advaita Prabhu, he met his mother as well as all the devotees from Mayapur. He adjusted everything and then went to Jagannath Puri. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew very well that his acceptance of sannyas was a thunderbolt for his mother. He therefore called for his mother and the devotees from Mayapur. And by the arrangement of Sri Advaita Acharya, he met them for the last time after his acceptance of sannyas. His mother was overwhelmed with grief when she saw that he was clean shaven. There was no longer any beautiful hair on his head. Mother Shachi was pacified by all the devotees, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked her to cook for him because he was very hungry, not having taken anything for 3 days. His mother immediately agreed, and forgetting everything else, she cooked for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during all the days she was at the house of Sri Advaita Prabhu. Then, after a few days, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requested his mother's permission to go to Jagannath Puri. At his mother's request, he made Jagannath Puri his headquarters after his acceptance of sannyas. Thus, everything was adjusted, and with his mother's permission, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proceeded toward Jagannath Puri. Now, as followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we need to understand these various angles. Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas when sannyas is basically forbidden. There is a verse in Vedic text that sannyas should not be taken in Kali Yuga. So why did he take sannyas? Anyone knows? Even there are many reasons, but at least the superficial reasons.
As a grihastha or a scholar, while he's saying that they're teasing, I mean, they're making fun of him, right, Prabhu? Yeah, at that time he thought that maybe if sannyasa, they will pay at least obeisances. I mean, they at least, so that is one of the thing I could come to my mind.
Sure. Very correct. Sannyas basically means the renounced order. And apart from a few mainstream religions, almost everybody has a some kind of system where somebody is completely dedicated to spiritual life. Now, there are one or two mainstream religions where there is a order forbidding you from taking sannyas. Like Christianity has celibate priests, and there's a huge debate whether this should be continued or not, because many cannot, many don't like it, or many cannot perform. Islam simply says absolutely not. Judaism, again, they forbid that. But the Buddhist religion, because it is very closely aligned with Vedic tradition, they have. The Jains in India, they have. Again, the Sikhs don't have. So what is the reason that some paths say absolutely not? The reason is not that because the system of sannyas is bad, but because they have bad experience with people not being able to kind of hold it. To be very objective, in our own ISKCON, one devotee, Yadunandan Swami, who preaches in Europe, he has compiled he is doing his research, and for his MA thesis, he wrote something about ISKCON and sannyas. Now, Prabhupada was so daring and so much adventurous as far as the sannyas order was concerned. One devotee had serious problems in his spiritual life, had left the association of devotees, came to India to do some business in Ayurveda and whatever. He couldn't manage that properly. And Prabhupada, when he came to Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, take sannyas and go and preach. Now it almost seemed, it's like in a stock market, if you say, okay, this company is not doing good, okay, I'll put $10 million here. You say, what do you mean? What is the kind of expectation? So people thought that anybody and everybody can take sannyas, and it is just, and there is some purport where Prabhupada said, after 50, one should go to the forest. So it took us 40 years to understand what is the meaning of, like, how do you have a very happy sannyasi who is happy with his austerities, happy with the general work which is expected of a sannyasi. So out of 194 sannyasis, or 192, according to our Yadunandan Swami's research, about half of them, they just understood that this is not meant for them, and they took a lower profile, that I'll better not remain as a sannyas. Now, once one devotee asked Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, you said that if a sannyasi has to step down, better he should die, because that's what the Shastra says. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also punished Chota Haridas for that. And Prabhupada's answer was like, if this doesn't touch your heart, nothing will. He said, Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord. I am not. I need you. So many times, so Shirisha is asking whether it is fall down or not. It is. It's not that it is not. But what is our shelter basically? Our shelter is not our learning, our money, our job. Our shelter is seva. Any kind of service done with our body, mind, or words. All three, the best. That's our shelter. So Prabhupada was always conscious that devotees should not be bereft of seva. So therefore, nowadays we don't have that kind of adventurous spirit in the sannyas ministry. There is a long vetting process, and they ask you so many questions, and then practically just see somebody who's just a, like grihasthas taking sannyas means actually they have to pass on through their grihastha life, vanaprastha life, and then sannyas. There are very good devotees like that, but few in number. Mostly it is the brahmachari students who at the age of 35, 45, whatever, show some exceptional talents in preaching, management, so many other skills, and then they are allowed. Now, you guys may not be moving around so much, but I have seen people, I know also, I see them. Just after sannyas, you're expected to become an expert manager, singer, dancer, cook, kirtaniya, performer, marital counselor, teenage counselor, parenting counselor, empathic listener. God, just by one day's ceremony, you get all these attributes? Isn't that a bit too much? There could be so many grihasas who are equally qualified to do that job. But we say, no, I just want a sannyasi. Fine, but allow that sannyasi to become, I'm sorry to use the word, but I'm tempted to use it, marinated. Like those of you who are from Andhra, Telangana, you will know that your moms or your aunties would be making mango pickle. Now this is the time, right? April, May. You take green mangoes and then you cut them up and then you put them in salt and then some turmeric and then some oil. And when you open it, when do you open it? Next year. For one full year, the pickle is allowed to kind of slowly have that reaction. And then it becomes fully matured. Although I used to like to eat that raw mango even on the very first day, just for, or in our household, we used to make those papad. And I used to love that dough. Of course, when it's fully dried and you fry it, that's a different taste, but I used to eat that raw. So unless somebody is fully matured, so that is why a sannyasi is supposed to travel. So he goes around various places. That's why in many other places they have a senior sannyasi and a junior one. The senior one does the counseling, the junior one just does the listening. He sees how things are managed. That is one thing we don't have. Any junior, like sannyas last year, and now he's expected to travel everywhere. So people are working on that, and especially I liked Yadundan Swami's that response in his book. Very human kind of analysis, very humane response to various problems and various things. And we will learn, just like any other tradition. As long as there is open discussion, we will learn, and we are learning. So this is how we understand the beginning process of why Mahaprabhu took sannyas then. So as Shri Shyamananda said rightly, sannyas was like the Nobel Prize of that time. So any Nobel laureate, wherever he goes, oh, welcome, speak. Well, if not Nobel, at least a PhD. So wherever you go, your PhD allows you to have a class or a discussion or whatever. A sannyasi is very visible. A sannyasi is shaven head, a staff, a stick in his hand, and the particular dress. And almost all of India was trained up that whatever sannyasi or whatever tradition you see, you immediately bow down. Now, bowing down, you take a bow before a normal sannyasi, you are just fulfilling the etiquette. And if those who see Mahaprabhu and they bow down, they get the benefit of bowing down before the Supreme Lord. This is the secret. The Lord wants that people should be relieved of their burden of their sins. And you can get rid of millions of mountains of sins by going to a temple, ringing the bell and offering prostrate obeisances. And because Kali Yuga people will not do that, the Lord leaves the temple and roams around in the streets so that anybody and everybody can bow down. Now, for that means you have to break the heart of your mother. Now, it is said that his mother came to see him. Why didn't Vishnu Priya Devi come? That is forbidden. She cannot ever see him. Now, this is not because this is the Lord, but for a sannyasi to see again his family members, there could be some spark of affection, something could come up. Now, you may say the affection for the mother cannot come up. Well, that is considered a little bit antiseptic. But affection for a wife would immediately give to a big forest fire of emotions. So therefore, wife cannot see him. Even sons cannot see him, daughters cannot see him. So here Mahaprabhu, now it's very hard rending when you see Mahaprabhu clasping the lotus feet of his mother and says, I think I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I was just carried away by my emotions. Should I come back? And he says, oh, no, don't do that, don't do that. You'll be a laughing stock of the whole world if you come back. Now, basically, this is what he wants. He wants that his mother should support his decisions. He says, no, don't come back. But I have a request. Yeah, what is it? Let me cook for you. He said, granted. So those 3 days, Chachimata cooks for him. And then she says that, my dear son, there is one more thought which came to my mind. Jagannath Puri and Mayapur, Navadvip, they're just like 2 rooms of a same house. There's always some kind of traffic. Somebody is going from Mayapur to Puri, somebody is coming from Puri to Mayapur. So, would you stay in Jagannath Puri? At least I'll get some information, some news about your whereabouts. Again, this is what Mahaprabhu wanted. He has come to disclose to the world, what is this form of Jagannath? The essence of Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra is separation, the mood of separation. And that's what Mahaprabhu came to taste. So immediately agrees, yes, I'll do that. Fully satisfied, Sachimata gives her permission. And she says that, please take care of my son. So these are some of the subtle threads coming out of this thing of Mahaprabhu Sannyas, Any points to discuss, questions to ask before we proceed?
Prabhuji, you mentioned about Yadunandan
Swami.
He's the same Prabhuji who has written, Swamiji who has written the book Chasing Rhinos?
No, Chasing Rhinos is by Shyam Sundar Prabhu. He is a Grihastha disciple of Prabhupada.
Yeah. Okay.
Yadunandan Swami is a second generation sannyasi. He's a disciple of Satsarup Maharaj and is stationed in Spain. And I don't think he ever comes to America. Mostly it's Europe and India.
I got confused. And is he writing the book, like the research you mentioned?
This is his MA thesis. So you have to write various papers, just like you could be doing something. So he decided to do his research on the ISKCON experience with Sannyas Ashram. Very nice research. All right, we move ahead. Pathe Nana Lilaras Deva Darshan Madhava Purir Katha Gopala Sthapan. Translation: on the way toward Jagannath Puri, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed many other pastimes. He visited various temples and heard the story about Madhavendra Puri and the installation of Gopal. Purport: this Madhav Puri is Madhavendra Puri. Another Madhav Puri is Madhavacharya, who was a spiritual master of a devotee in the line of Gadadhar Pandit and who wrote a book known as Sri Mangala Bhashya. Madhavacharya, however, is different from Madhavendra Puri, who is mentioned in this verse. Would anyone like to read? Shamasaki, your question will take later. We'll read a little bit first. Well, I mentioned three reasons. There are three reasons for his advent. I'll look into that. We'll read a little bit here now. Okay, who's reading?
I would like to read, Prabhu.
Please go ahead.
Text 97. Prabhu, can you please scroll up? Gary Prabhu. Text 97. Hare Krishna. Kshira Churi Katha Sakshi Gopala Vivarana Nityananda Kaila Prabhura Danda Bhanjana. Translation: From Nityananda Prabhu, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard the story of Kshira Churi Gopinada and of the witness Gopala. The Nityananda Prabhu broke the sannyasa rod belonging to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This Kshirachuri Gopinada is situated in Remuna, about 4 miles away from the Balasore station on the northeastern railway, formerly known as the Bengal Mayapur Railway. This station is situated a few miles away from the famous Kharghapur Junction station. Some time ago, the charge of the temple was given to Shyamasundara Adhikari from Gopi Vallabhapura, which lies on the border of the district of Medinipura. Shamsundar Adhikari was a descendant of Rasikhananda Murari, the chief disciple of Shyamananda Goswami. A few miles before the Jagannath Puri station is a small station called Sakshi Gopala. Near this station is a village named Satyavadi, where the temple of Sakshi Gopal is situated. Krudahana eka gela Jagannatha Dhekiya Mura Chittahana Padila Bhumite. After his sannyasa rod was broken by Nityananda Prabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu apparently became very angry and left his company to travel alone to Jagannath temple. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered to Jagannath temple and saw Lord Jagannath, he immediately lost his senses and fell down on the ground. Sarvabhauma lana gela apana bhavana Tritiya Prahare Prabhu Haila Chetana. After Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Lord Jagannatha in the temple and fell down unconscious, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya took him to his home. The Lord remained unconscious until the afternoon, when he finally regained his consciousness. Text 100. Nityananda, Jagadananda, Damodara, Mukunda, Pache, Asi, Mila, Sabe, Paila, Ananda. The Lord had left Nityananda's company and had gone alone to the Jagannath temple. But later, Nityananda, Jagadananda, Damodara, and Mukunda came to see him. And after seeing him, they were very pleased. Tabe Sarvabhauma Prabhu Prasada Karila Apana Ishvara Murti Tanre Dekha Aila. After this incident, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestowed his mercy upon Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya by showing him his original form as a Lord. Tabeta Karila Prabhu Dakshina Gamana Kurma Kshetre Kaila Vasudeva Vimochana. After bestowing mercy on Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the Lord started for southern India. When he came to Kurma Kshetra, he delivered a person named Vasudeva. Text 103. Jiyada Narsimhe Kaila Narsimha Sthavana Pathe Pathe Grame Grame Nama Pravartana. After visiting Kurma Kshetra, the Lord visited the South Indian temple of Jiyada Narsimha and offered his prayers to Lord Narsimhadeva. On his way, he introduced the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in every village. Godavari Tira Vane Vrindhavana Brahma Ramananda Raya Saha Tahani Milana. Once the Lord mistook the forest on the bank of the river Godavari to be Vrindavana. In that place, he happened to meet Ramanand Rai. Trimala Tripadi Sthana Kaila Darshana Sarvatra Karila Krishna Nama Pracharana. He visited the places known as Tirumala and Tirupati, where he extensively preached the chanting of the Lord's holy name. This holy place is situated in the district of Tanjore, Chittoor, South India. The temple of Tirupati is situated in the valley of Venkatachala and contains a deity of Lord Ramachandra. On top of Venkatachala is the famous temple of Balaji. Tabeta Pashandi Gane Karila Dalana Ahovala Narsimadi Kaila Darshana. After visiting the temples of Tirumala and Tirupati, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to subdue some atheists. He then visited the temple of Ahovila Narsimha. Purport: the Ahovila temple is situated in Dakshinatya, the district of Karnula, within the subdivision of Sarbela. Throughout the whole district, this very famous temple is much appreciated by the people. There are 8 other temples also, and all of them together are called the Navanarshima temples. There is much wonderful architecture and artistic engraving work in these temples. However, as stated in the logical Gattegi, the
Local gazette.
oh sorry,
Local gazette.
local gazette, the Karnula manual, the work is not complete. Okay. Sriranga Kshetra Aila Kaverira Tira Sriranga Dekiya Prema He Haila Ashrita Asthira. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to the land of Sriranga Kshetra on the bank of the Kaveri, he visited the temple of Sri Ranganatha and was there overwhelmed in ecstasy of love of Godhead.
A small tip here, when we read Chapter, you know what's happening now? Every line is like a big pastime discussion, which will come much later. Mahaprabhu went and met this Brahmana in Kurmakshetra. Whoa, that's like a huge story with a lot of philosophical discussions coming out that later. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is following this pattern that, oh readers, I would like to give you a synopsis right now. Later, if I have time, I will expand. When he says time, it means he is in his mid-90s while he's writing. He cannot see anything. His hands are trembling. And he says, still I write. That's a miracle. That's point number 1. Secondly, the Karnool Gazette says that the work is still not finished. What do you mean not finished? This is 1922 information. Because that was the time when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, had sent his people. He was preparing his commentary. So he would tell that, okay, a team goes to this particular place and brings me a report. So then they would go, they would note down the station, they would note down the next smaller gauge. India at that time had a normal gauge railway and a narrow gauge railway. Here gauge means the distance between the 2 tracks. So a bigger track was a express train, an express train going at 25 miles an hour, which was considered express. Now you can understand what a narrow gauge would go. It could be making 5 miles an hour, who knows? And still people in India were in awe. Oh my God, a train, what a nice thing. And a lot of smoke chugging along the road. And then they would meet somebody who would tell them that, okay, that temple is not on this side, it's actually on the other side. So then they would make a note. So sometimes you may see that 15 kilometers from this station, there is a narrow gauge railway line which goes to this particular village, and there's a big banyan tree, and there's a small well, and behind that is the home of such and such person who is the descendant of this great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Today, there may not be the tree, there may not be the well, there may not be the railway line also. So Prabhupada was asked that why this kind of information which may be not true from today's point of view. So Prabhupada said, well, my Guru Maharaj's idea was We are not making it up. We are not giving something which is not documented. As much as possible, we are trying to give you, because Mahaprabhu came 500 years ago, Krishna came 5,000 years ago, and Brahma created this whole cosmos billions of years ago. But funnily, from in one angle, Prabhupada writes, Brahmaji recently created this cosmos. Recently, that is yesterday, day before yesterday. But from that cosmic angle, this world is considered very recent, just a few trillion years ago, a few billion years ago. So time is a very funny thing. It can compress so many things. You can see things happening. You can, like there is a story of one king who goes to Lord Brahma and says that, you have any groom for my daughter, a suitable husband? So this was the question in his mind. So when he goes to Brahma's office, we are calling it office, basically his place, there was kirtan going on. And they said, you have to wait. So he waited maybe for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And Brahmaji was told that a great king has come from the middle planetary system. He said, all right, send him in. So he says that, yes, my dear king, you are a very pious person. I know that. What can I do for you? I just want a suitable boy for my daughter. So he said, well, by the way, do you know that those 20 minutes that you spent here, few hundred centuries have gone from the place where you came, and there is nobody now. Oh yeah, Lord Balram has taken his advent here, and therefore he could be a suitable, this is Revati, Lord Balram's eternal consort, but she had taken the birth as a princess. So he says, okay. But then Balram is Dwapar Yuga size and she is the previous Yuga size. So she's like 4 times taller than him. So Lord Brahma intervenes and says, okay, we will make her the right size for Balram. So like, shoo, they make her the right size and then it is proper. So this is how time kind of goes on, relentless in its, it is said that time is like a giant machine which is just churning everything, making it into powder. That's how it is described. So we don't depend on material excavations, archaeological findings for our understanding. But at the same time, whenever possible, our acharyas give that reference. At the same time, they caution us that don't just depend on that. Don't depend on that. It is there just for additional information. So we will stop our reading here. There are a few questions. So first I answered. So Shirisha, that means it's a fall down. So that question is answered. Yeah. In the sense, how we see Prabhupada dealt, there was one sannyasi who had problems and Prabhupada said, get married. And Prabhupada himself supervised that. He was a sannyas guru and then he also was the priest who performed his marriage. So that's why in some other sampradayas, they say that, you think sannyas is like a plaything or something, child's play. No, we don't. We have our historical reasons why it was done. And we have full sympathy for those who took up that challenge. And we also understand why some people could not maintain it. And we also know that those who have not given up service, they are still glorious. That's how we see it. So what are the 3 reasons? These are from Shamasaki. What are the 3 reasons for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taking sannyas? Mentioned 3 reasons. Okay, that's the last question. So basically,